This is the Linear Tube Audio Z10 integrated amplifier. It's designed and built right here in America. It retails for $4,900 US, and I have no regrets. So let's roll that intro. So this is a little bit different from my normal videos. What I'm doing is I'm going to be taking a trip to Fern and Roby, a company who actually builds the chassis for linear tube audio. I thought it would be cool to show you guys how it's made, and quite frankly, it's just an excuse for me to get out of the house. And also, linear tube audio actually has no idea that I'm doing this, so this is going to be a surprise to them just as much as it is to you. So let's get on the road. All right, so first things first, priorities. Observe the beautiful scenery of southeastern Virginia. Utterly boring, isn't it? All right, we've arrived, and my exposure is completely washed out, but you know what? Doesn't matter. That's why it's 0 fidelity. I don't know, feels like there might be a zombie apocalypse here sometime soon. Anyways, let's go on into, I think it's this building right here. Leave it to me to go in the wrong way. Alright guys, so let's begin the tour, and you may not hear me too well because it's pretty loud in here. I mean, this is a machine shop with multiple CNC machines. We have a wood shop, we have a welding station to my right, so yeah, it's going to be pretty loud. But anyways, when it comes to the LTA products, it all starts with raw material, which is what you see over here. Now, as we move around the shop, I'm going to take you to this little display that they have. In fact, let's just fast forward a little bit. Alright, so here we are, and as you can tell, this is a proper machine shop. We have multiple CNC machines going on here. They've been kind enough to pause them so I can film this section of the video. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through how the plates are made for the linear tube audio amps, and then we're going to see some stuff in action. So let's go over here to this display. Now, Fern and Roby were nice enough to set everything up for me, and basically how the process starts is with a solid chunk of raw material, in this case aluminum. It'll go through one of these machines, either or here, and what you end up with is something that's nice and trimmed. It goes through another process of buffing and cutting things into a more precise shape. Oh man, I'm criminally cutting short of what the process is like. Then we put in the indentations for our buttons, volume control, so on and so forth, and they actually hollow out a lot of material, as you can see here. In fact, oftentimes they have to CNC new parts, that way it can attach to the circuit board very well, and this is really high quality stuff. After that, they have to sand the entire thing and make sure that it's good enough to where it can go through an anodization process. Now this takes place about an hour away from here, but it's still locally done. And then after all that's said and done, we have the plates for the LTA amps. And what's cool is just about everything here is made here. Now these are going to be the buttons for our integrated amplifier. And again, this is all made right here in-house. So pretty cool stuff. Now let's take a look at some other things. Alright, so in case some of you are wondering how they get the text on the plate of the amps, this is the machine that does it. Don't ask me how it works. All I can do is show you the final product. You'll notice LTA proofs on the shelf. And up here you're going to see all of the text that's stamped onto the metal. Cool stuff. Now let's take a look at some other things in the shop. So this is pretty cool. This is an LTA plate that's currently inside a CNC machine. That's thankfully not running right now. Anyways, if we're lucky, maybe we can get a shot of the CNC machine at work. Alright guys, next up is a room that's too cool not to show you right now. Now some LTA gear gets done up here, but I want to show off the turntables that Fern and Roby are making because, my god, they're just awesome. Check this out. This is a solid brass platter and it weighs a ton. Over here is a turntable that uses a cast iron chassis, of course, with our brass platter. I mean, that's just insane. And nearly everything here is made at the shop. Talk about in-house quality control. Now, let's take a quick look at the wood shop. So I'm going to keep this section short and sweet because this is supposed to be about linear tube audio. Anyways, this is the wood shop that Fern and Roby use to assemble their speakers, and they also make a bunch of furniture for other companies. In fact, that's kind of what pays the bills. Fun fact, I didn't notice, but they also make the cabinets for DeVore Fidelity speakers. In fact, here's going to be a shipping carton for the orangutan, I believe. Anyways, cool stuff. Now let's wrap this up by talking to some people. Okay, so there's been a change in plans. This was my first time conducting an interview, and it was awful. You could hear my voice, but you couldn't hear everyone else's voice, so I decided, you know what, why don't I revisit in the fall when it's a little bit cooler out? I'll try to do a better job then, but for now, we're just going to focus on the product that's right next to me. So yeah, let's do that. Alright guys, so as usual, to kick off this review, I'm going to briefly go over what it is that you get with this product. We're going to take a look at the front, on the back, we're going to take a peek on the inside, and then I'm going to talk about how it sounds. But first, on the front of the LTA Z10, I want to comment on just how clean it looks. I know it doesn't really translate well in video and in pictures, but in person, it has a very fine aesthetic to it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the features starting from left to right. So, on the left, we have a power button. To the right of that, we're going to have our volume control. Now, this volume control is made out of aluminum right there in Richmond, Virginia. Even the set screw is made by that company in Richmond, Virginia. Now, listen to this. When you turn the volume up or down, you'll hear that clicking noise. So this uses a stepped attenuator. It has over 1,000 steps. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a really nice noise, especially with something at this price point. Over here, we're going to have text for our input selection. And to select the inputs, you can either use the remote or you can use this button. And it's important to note that these buttons here are touch sensitive. They're not traditional push-in buttons. And of course, they're made out of brass material. Over here we have tape monitor, then we have some buttons for our menu system. So this is going to be the main button for our menu system. This is going to be up, down, back. I would show you guys how that works, but I am horrible with navigating menu systems. So we're just going to skip that step. This is going to be our LED screen, and yes, you can turn down the brightness, and beneath that, you're going to notice this text saying headphone. So you can switch between speaker or headphone operation. We have high impedance. So this is going to be, I think, 1 watt into this output, and then I think it's 0.5 watt into the low impedance output. So I don't have any comments about the headphones just because I don't have any high-end headphones to use with this amp. If you want to check that out, check out Steve Guttenberg's review because he spent a lot of time talking about how the headphone section on this integrated amp sounds. So anyways, now let's look at the back. Okay, so here's the back of the unit, and as you guys can tell, there's not going to be a whole lot to talk about here. To our left, we have a connector for our power cord. To our right, we have a whole bunch of inputs. We have our tape monitor in and outs. We have our 4 RCA inputs, a set of balanced inputs. Now, it's important to note that this is a single-ended design. This is more for convenience. And then we have a set of 5-way speaker terminals. Now, it's also cool to note that you see text on here saying that this is manufactured by Linear Tube Audio in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and also a little stamp on here saying that the chassis design is manufactured by Fern and Roby in Richmond, Virginia, letting you know that this is built in the US. Now, let's take a look on the inside. All right, guys, so let's dive straight on in. And what you're looking at is a circuit that was designed by David Burning, a gentleman who has over 40 years of experience designing amplifiers. And what makes this one so unique is that it's a Class AB design that operates at a carrier frequency. Let me try to explain. Basically what's going on is he's sending a signal to the tubes that operates between 0 and 250 kilohertz. Think of it like a radio station signal. Now, there's apparently a lot of benefits to this. According to LTA, it allows the tubes to run at twice the voltage but 1/3 of the current, which allows the tubes to operate at a very cool temperature. Now, of course, this is going to elongate the tube life. LTA claims that you can get anywhere between 10,000 to 20,000 hours of life out of the tubes. And even beyond that, another benefit is that you get very linear performance. And this is especially important when it comes to bass frequencies because apparently tubes become non-linear from 8 Hz to 60 Hz. Now, it's important to note that they do cut off the high frequency at around 100 Hz at the output, and this, of course, drastically reduces noise. Otherwise, let's take a closer look at what we get. So this is going to be our power transformer. No, this amp does not use a tube rectifier because, quite frankly, LTA thinks that it's old, obsolete technology and there's more disadvantages than advantages of using them. Over here, we're going to notice power caps. These are actually Mondorf's. Pretty high quality stuff. I think I found some Mondorf's hidden away over here. We have some 12 AU7 tubes. Over here, we're going to have some 7062 tubes. We have our EL84s. This amp will output a whopping 10 watts into 8 ohms and 12 watts into 4 ohms. So, you know, nice powerhouse here. We have a heat sink, power board underneath that. This is going to be our board for our volume control. Overall, it's a well-built piece. Now, let's talk about how it sounds. Okay, so by now, I'm sure you guys want to know, number one, what this unit actually sounds like, and then number two, if it's any good with driving real-world speakers in a real-world living situation. So I'm going to try to address all of that right now. So first, let's begin with going over the general character of the Z10. Because when you sit down and you listen to it, it becomes obvious that LTA was going for a presentation that takes the best of solid state, that takes the best of tube, and then just put it together, giving you, ideally, the best of both worlds. Now, it's important to mention that this isn't a new goal. In fact, many manufacturers have been chasing this goal for decades now. But in my experience, and believe you me, I haven't heard it all, but in my experience, this amplifier has done the best job of giving you the best of both worlds that I've heard, at least for this kind of money. So think of it like this. When you listen to the Z10, you're going to get the kind of balance you would expect from a good solid state amp. The treble, the mid-range, the bass, it's all well put together. Nothing jumps out at you. It's all very linear. The bass is strong. The bass is actually very tight and clean for what it is. You also get effortless detail, the kind of detail you would expect for something at this price point. Yet you also get that tube sound. You get that richness to the tone. You get that body and dimensionality. And plus, when you start cranking the volume, you're not going to get that etched up treble that can be so unpleasant, leaving you with a presentation that's hard not to enjoy. So what I want to do now is I want to get into a little bit more detail, starting with the treble. So the treble, believe it or not, is perhaps the most neutral that I've heard at this price point so far, in the sense that it doesn't add anything, nor does it take anything away. So if you have bright sounding speakers, that's the kind of sound you're going to get. If you have rolled off sounding speakers, that's what you're going to get. So it's going to be very honest at not only revealing what's going on with the recording, but it's not going to put a band-aid over your speakers or color the sound in any one particular way. But you still know you're listening to a tube amp because there's almost this sense of smoothness to the top end. I think some people may even consider it to be laid back sounding just because they may be used to something that's a little bit more artificially boosted in one way, shape, or form. But you're not going to get that out of the Z10. And because it's a tube amp, as mentioned before, when you start cranking the volume, it's going to sound smooth on the top end instead of giving you that etched presentation, at least until you take things a little too far. Anyways, let's move on to the mid-range. So the mid-range is going to be exceptional, as you could imagine, right? It's going to be honest. There's going to be great body to the sound. There's going to be a rich tone to it. Yet at the same time, I feel like it's going to just give you whatever the signal is being fed to it. I mean, it's, again, very honest. It's not like a lot of tube amps that give you this thick and saturated sound that feels like a warm blanket, nor is it going to sound thin. It's just somewhere in between, and it's very pleasant and honest to listen to. Then we have the bass. So the bass is very interesting because you would think that this would have kind of flabby bass, but that's not the case at all. It's really, really strong. Even on speakers that usually like high current amplifiers, I'm talking about hundreds of watts, like the Buchardt S400s. It controls those things very well, and I'm surprised by how much bass it's able to get out of those little speakers. So the bass, I think, is going to surprise a lot of individuals. Next, let's talk about dynamics. So obviously dynamics is going to be best when you pair this up with high efficiency speakers, or power sensitive speakers, I should say. So obviously that's where you're going to get really good, strong dynamic range. On a normal set of speakers, it's just going to be okay. And that leads me to how it sounds on average speakers, because that's actually how I started my listening test, was on the Buchardt S300s, the S400s, the Totem Skies, and so on and so forth. And I'll say this. If you're in a small to medium-sized room and you listen at sane listening volumes, I'm talking about 90 dB or less, actually, this is a surprisingly good match. You would be shocked as to how much power 10 or 12 watts is going to give you. And I would say for most music types, on most average loudspeakers in a medium to small room, it's a good match. Obviously, it's a best match with high efficiency speakers, but otherwise, it's something that I wish more people would experience, because you would be surprised, again, by how much 10 or 12 watts can take you. Lastly, let's talk about the music listening experience. So the music listening experience overall is very pleasant. And like I said before, it's not going to give you this overly saturated sound. So if you're looking for something that makes everything sound friendly, well, this isn't going to be it for you. Nor is it going to have that super exciting sound that's just going to reach out and grab you due to boosted coloration here or there throughout the presentation. It's not going to do that. But if you're looking for something that's balanced, if you're looking for something that's honest, that has just a little bit of dimensionality and body to the sound, while giving you all of the other audiophile things, then yeah, there's a good chance you're going to like it. Still, it's not going to be for everyone. It's not perfect. So let's go over those imperfections now. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the obvious out of the way. If you're somebody who has a big room to fill, or you listen at very loud volumes and you're not running speakers with high power sensitivity, then yeah, this probably isn't going to be for you. Likewise, if you're looking for an amp that has specific coloration, maybe you like bright treble or a big fat sounding mid-range or really strong bass, so I'm talking about emphasized bass, then yeah, this isn't going to be for you either, just because that's not what this integrated is about. It's about giving you more of a balanced and honest presentation, while at the same time retaining just enough elements to make it musical and enjoyable. So beyond that, the only real complaint that I have about this unit has to do with this. Holding it the wrong way, the remote control. So I'm not one to use remote controls. I'm old-fashioned. I like to get up and to turn things and whatnot, so I might not be the best source to launch criticism here, but nonetheless, when it comes to simple things like I just want to turn down the brightness, doing that through the Apple remote on this unit is just, it seems unnecessarily difficult to me, and I feel like this is when you realize that you're dealing with a small company, one that doesn't have the budget to come up with a unique remote control and an interface that just works very fluid. Now, maybe it's just a user error experience, but I found that the interface between the remote and the integrated amp could use a little bit of brushing up. Anyways, guys, that's it for the criticisms, and that leads me to my final thoughts. Actually, guys, there's one more thing that I need to mention, and that's the fact that this integrated amp does not have a dedicated pre-out, meaning that if you have a sub or a set of subs that you want to connect via an RCA cable, you're not going to be able to do that. Now, believe it or not, this is a tactical and purposeful decision by LTA, and that's because they feel like the best way to connect a sub to something like this is through a high-pass filter or to just get a rel. And this is something that I actually agree with. Since this unit is dedicated to the best possible stereo playback, it makes sense that they would want people to enjoy subwoofers in the best way possible. Now, obviously, this may be a deal killer for some people, and if enough people feel that way, then I'm sure LTA will add a dedicated pre-out in the future. But still, it's worth mentioning, and now let's wrap up this review. Okay, so out of all the products that I've reviewed at Zero Fidelity, the LTA Z10 may be the most consummate example of an exotic, high-end product. That and maybe the Rosso Fiorentino Volterras. Anyways, when you get right down to it, this product is built to a very high standard by two companies right here in the United States, and what you get is really, really solid performance. Now, clearly, it's not going to be for everybody. I mean, number one, you have that price tag. Not everyone's going to be able to afford it, and even the people who can afford it may not find output power to fulfill all of their needs. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I think many people will be surprised by how powerful this integrated amp really is, despite the specifications. But nonetheless, it's a really solid product, and I have a feeling that the people who listen to it and appreciate it are going to fall in love. This is a destination piece, and for many people, it's an in-game piece. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this review on a completely subjective note by stepping you through my experience with this unit, because when I first got it home and I connected it to my system, which at the time was running Klipsch Forte IIIs, I honestly was kind of underwhelmed. I listened to it and I was like, it's good. I called up LTA, I told them what my listening impressions were. They said everything was spot on and that I was good to go, which is always refreshing. But I decided, let's spend a little bit more time listening to it. So I spent a little bit more time with the integrated amp, and my impressions of turned to, okay, yeah, this isn't too bad at all. Then I spent a little bit more time with it, and things progressively just got better. I went from going to like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And now here I am at the very end of my time with this unit, and I don't want to send it back. And the whole point is, this is something that I feel like you have to live with for a while in order to truly appreciate. And sometimes that's how really good gear, how it goes with really good gear. I always lose it at the end of my videos. Why is that? Anyways, guys, that's just my take on the LTA Z10. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace. Okay, so normally this is the part of the video that I reserve for comparisons, only I'm not going to be able to offer that to you guys this time around. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, everything that I have in-house right now is either significantly less expensive than the Z10 or significantly more expensive than the Z10. I don't really have any fair comparisons to levy here. And then number two, the only integrated amplifier that I have that's priced almost exactly like the Z10 is not in my possession. I'm talking about my AMR 777 SE integrated amplifier. I lent it out to AMR for a trade show, and apparently there was a problem with shipping, and now it's apparently lost. That kind of sucks. Anyways, bottom line, I'm not going to be able to offer any comparisons, so I'm just going to wrap up this video with some B-roll. So, yep. What is this right here? Parasound, vintage Parasound, vintage Hafler. Are you guys making this stuff? Who does this belong to?
Don't know.
All right, guys, so this is gonna, God, this shop is loud. La, 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 driving, 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 taking forever, driving, driving, driving. All right, so I'm done, and because I filmed a little more content than I thought I would, I'm gonna save this for the very end of the video. So I'm very glad I made this trip. Initially, I didn't think I was going to, but it's always nice to put a face on the individuals behind a company. And it's important to mention that this is only a small part of what goes into bringing a product to market. I mean, this is just the chassis work. I didn't cover what it's like to design something like this and all the time it takes to make a unique circuit, let alone to source all the parts, to put the parts together, which is done up in Baltimore. There's just a lot that goes into it. And what's best is that these people are actually compensated well enough to actually do this for a full-time living. In fact, they get medical insurance, dental insurance, all that good stuff. And if you're not in America, let me tell you, that's pretty rare when you work for a small company. So overall, pretty cool stuff. And hopefully this gives you guys a little bit more of an appreciation for what goes into products like these and why they're sometimes priced the way that they are. Anyways, as always, thanks for watching, everyone. It's time for me to get home. So until next time, peace.